Yeah, it's interesting as you talk about this, Jeff, because back then you had the political movement, which were trying to get a hold of Jesus to use him for their purposes. These were known as the Zealots. And then we also had the religious movement, which they wanted to control Jesus. Fast forward to 2023, it's the same thing. The political movement always wants to get a hold of Jesus and twist and use him to serve their purpose. And same thing with religious folks. And he comes in and says, my kingdom is of another world. And that's what he came to establish his kingdom. And it's a spiritual kingdom, first and foremost. And that's why they couldn't receive him then. And that's why people can't receive him now.
Marcus Aurelius said, "What we do in life echoes through eternity." What is your life echoing through eternity? Welcome to Echoes Through Eternity with Dr. Jeffrey Skinner. Our mission is to inspire, engage, and encourage leaders from across the globe to plant missional churches and be servant leaders. So join us and hear the stories of servant leaders reverberating lives as God echoes them through eternity. Brought to you by Missional Church Planting and Leadership Development and Dynamic Church Planting International.
Welcome into Echoes Through Eternity. I am your host, Dr. Jeffrey D. Skinner. What is God echoing through your life today? I am joined in the studio today by Josh-khachadourian. Josh and I met through a Bible study online. I was using my Bible app and subscribed to a Bible study in there, and then that triggered a funnel, I guess, on his side, and I began to get some emails from him, and I subscribed to that. I was just impressed with his content that he had there. His ministry is two men, much like Bob Hunter. Bob's focus tended to be more on the working with young men and kind of helping them discover biblical masculinity. Josh has a heart for the church. He has a heart and a passion for getting men involved in a local church. And just had some really good insight and wanted to bring him on the podcast today and just to allow him the opportunity to tell his story. Just for those of you that are listening, you know that this podcast is about leadership development and church planting. And so when we plant a church, we like to focus a lot on style. American churches especially, we like to focus on those good catchphrases, those good marketing terms that are going to pull people in the door. And certainly we want to do whatever we do with excellence. I am a full believer in that. But simultaneously, we've got to have some substance to anything that we do. And so the days of a slick advertising campaign, especially with the younger generation who have been marketed to their entire life and can spot a fraud and can spot a hypocrite a mile away, we've got to have something more than just y'all come mentality. We have got to offer them something, a life change, a transformation in their life that is measurable and meaningful. And so that's another thing that drew me to Josh. And so if you're talking about church planting, Josh is a good example of someone who is bringing some discipleship, targeting a group of people, men for him. And he understands his target audience. He understands what they need, what their desires are. And so crafted a message that is both biblical, meaningful, and has measurable change associated with it. Transformation, if you would, that I think is important for anybody that's doing ministry today to understand. So Josh, welcome in, brother. It's great to have you.
Jeff, it's an honor to be here. I love what you're about. Thank you for sharing your platform with me today. And just even your opening right there to talk about substance, because that's what we need right now. Right now there's lots of topical messages. It's 3 easy steps to overcome stress or anger or whatever it is to help people where they're at. And I get that. But what we're lacking some meat. We're lacking some substance. And the topical stuff that's being preached in many pulpits is good to get people in the door, but it doesn't give me sustainable nutrition, spiritual nutrition that I can live off of. So I love what you're about. I love what you're doing, and we definitely share the same heart. Let's start moving from milk, and let's start learning to grow, mature, and digest some meaty messages and hear the word of the Lord.
Amen. Definitely catch me tempted to shout and run aisles over that message right there. We were talking just a little bit before the podcast here, before we started. I'm Church of the Nazarene, and we share a common quote-unquote ancestry there. Talk a little bit about where you're from there.
All right. So I'm actually recording with you today. I'm coming in. I'm from New York originally, but for the past 13 years now, I've been in Pennsylvania and I settled in a town called Nazareth. So I'm in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. You can refer to me as Josh of Nazareth if you'd like to. Um, but this area is great because it was settled by Count Zinzendorf and the Moravians. And there's many biblical towns here. There's Bethlehem, there's Nazareth, we have Emmaus, we have Zion. It's pretty cool to be here.
Yeah.
And it did factor in when I chose my location. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Living in Nazareth. My kids can be born in Bethlehem. So yeah, I got that going.
So you're living in Nazareth and you even have a house of bread nearby. So yeah, if you ever get hungry, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And then your last name is Armenian, and there's some history there too. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I am Armenian. And if anyone knows anything about Armenia, I'll give you a quick history lesson. It was around 302 AD. They became the first nation to accept Christianity and declare it and make it their national religion. And because of that, Christianity has permeated and infiltrated the culture, including the names. And so my name, Khachadourian, Khach actually means cross. And Khachadourian means son of the cross bearer. So I'm josh-khachadourian. I live in Nazareth, and I wrote a book about Jesus called The Standard. So I'm just walking out wherever the Lord leads me.
That's awesome. So when was your book published?
So yeah, the interesting thing with my book, I'll tell you a quick backstory. I've been in business. I've had different ministry things that I've done on the side as the Lord opened up doors where I could serve in my local church. Always have a heart for that. And I found myself in since 2010 or so, I'm working in the corporate environment now. I'm working in a Fortune 500 company. I'm gaining lots of experience in the systems of the world, in leadership, development, managing, building teams. And my wife is actually an entrepreneur and she's an online entrepreneur. So I was helping her with what she was doing. I started joining some online masterminds so I could help her with her business and learning this, as you mentioned at the beginning, marketing and how do you market? How do you sell online? And how can I help her prosper with what she's doing? And while I'm doing this, I'm running into these circles of all these different men and women that are doing what they love doing. It's like their passion projects. And I'm asking the Lord, I said, Lord, what's in my heart? Like, when can I do what I want to do? And I wasn't even sure what I was supposed to do. I'm just providing for my family. I'm being a husband. I'm being a father. And in 2016 is when I really felt the Lord lead me to start putting I've led small groups, I've done different leadership activities, and I really felt the Lord start to lead me in putting all of my material together and just start getting ready. Because this is what I've learned, Jeff, in the Christian life, is that there's controllables and uncontrollables. I can control my preparation. I can control what I do. I can't control the opportunity and the open doors and the suddenly moments that the Lord's going to give me. But what I wanted to be prepared for is when that opportunity arises and when the Lord says, now is time, I want to be prepared. I don't want to be, sleeping on stuff I could have been doing. So short answer to the book, sorry, that's a little bit longer.
That's okay.
But in 2016, I started journaling and just looking at Jesus through this new lens. I was in corporate, I'm in leadership, and I'm not just reading the stories in the Gospels just as, hey, what is Jesus saying? I'm also looking at what he's doing. And all sorts of different things are coming to life for me as look at the way Jesus leads. Look at what he did. Look at his level of emotional intelligence there. Look at this attribute. Look at what he's developing in his men. And I started journaling this, and somewhere along the way from 2016 over the next year or so, I said, I think I have a book here. And I finished it in 2020. It was a slow go. I didn't set out and say, hey, I'm going to write a book. So in 2020, I released this book. It's called The Standard, Discovering Jesus as the Standard for Masculinity. And I break down the life of Jesus in 6 dimensions. We look at self-mastery. We look at leadership. We look at communication, empathy, emotional intelligence. We look at confrontation. And lastly, we wrap it up with love. And we have a call to action there to go deeper with the Lord or to meet him if you don't know him.
Yeah, that's good. And that is all of those topics. I mean, wow. And who would have known? 2020, fast forward to today, and
Right.
the divisiveness in our culture. Christianity, some would say we're living in a post-Christian world. And it's just a way of saying that people are either biblically illiterate or they may have some understanding of the Bible, but and Jesus and God, but most of the time it's a warped or bad understanding based upon either bad experiences or hearsay, what somebody else has said, and from their bad experiences, and then beyond that, they don't, even if they do believe, they don't use that as their standard for living. They believe the church in some ways, in some corners, as you talked about, they haven't really given people a lot of substance. We focused a lot on behavior change and instead of transformation. The transformation doesn't come from behavior change. The behavior change comes from transformation,
Right.
which in the transformation comes by living in proximity to Jesus, by living and following him and doing as he did. In the Jewish rabbi days, there was a saying, so may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi.
Yes.
And that was just a way of saying, may you live in such a close relationship with your rabbi that you guys share the same dirt, that you smell the same, you look the same in many ways. And, just a timely message that God laid on your heart. I think that's even more relevant today, and talking about how we communicate and even conflict. We, in an age of social media, how do you engage in conflict? Is we've basically kind of holed up in our own little silos. And so we have our Christian silo and maybe our conservative Christian silo and maybe our progressive Christian silo and our liberal Christian silo. And then we just shout at each other. Nobody's listening. It's just a world of noise out there. So I think your book, it's one of the things that drew me into your Bible study was the way that you use the leadership principles to draw, and in comparison to Jesus. They're not just pulled out of, look, there's some fantastic authors out there, Maxwell and others, Patrick Lencioni and others that are out there, just fantastic stuff. But you start with Jesus first as that standard and not shy about that, and then apply that, as opposed to just taking a leadership standard and applying it backwards to Jesus, which is not always. I mean, the reality is I can take pretty much any principle outside, any topic outside, and just kind of look through the Bible and find that,
Right.
and find support for it. Even it may not be contextual, but I can find support for it. So I love that. I think it's a great message there. So talk about your 6 principles there. So just kind of go through them one by one.
Yeah, and what I'm doing here, Jeff, is we're talking about reaching a generation of men, right? A specific type of guy. And I'm the guy. It's the driven, it's the ambitious guy who's, he's in church, he gets saved, or he's watching Christians, or maybe he's in like a mainline church and he's kind of dabbling a little bit, but he doesn't totally feel at home because he's got this drive. He's got this ambition that I believe is God-given, but probably misdirected or misguided because there hasn't been a lot of teaching about that. And he's in a system, or he's in a construct of, what do I do with my talents and my gifts, and who am I, and what's the model? And I'm not church bashing at all, but we have not done an excellent job with men. We have not done an excellent job at large with presenting Jesus as a standard for masculinity, as this is what a man does. So the premise of the book is that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And we have that message down really good. We know that. But he's also the Son of Man. And that's his favorite self-descriptor. So he had to enter into humanity, fully embracing us without embracing our fallen condition. And so when we get that, and this is the biggest eye-opener for men that they tell me is like, wow, Jesus had to punch the clock. There might have been days he didn't want to go to work. He's like me, and he can identify with the grind and the things that I'm going through. So what I'm doing is I repackage people's understanding of how they relate to and how they view Jesus to make him accessible, not make him this distant, religious character. The world's telling us he's all about love, but there's no truth. Other people are presenting him, it's the stained glass image I can't get too close to. Even in men's Bible studies, I mean, what do we love to study? We love to study the life of David. We love to look at men that had moral failures because we can relate to them. But we kind of keep Jesus separate, and we don't look at him and his life as the blueprint, the standard, or the prototype for how we should live. So to take it to the next step, I mean, there's 6 dimensions. I'll just touch on these briefly. The world right now. So the man that this is really for, anyone will benefit from it because it's timeless truth, right? And it will benefit men, women. I have all different people. I have parents that give it to their children. There's so many good lessons here. They're very short chapters. They're followed by a coaching section where I give you some application. The book is not about me. It's not filled with my stories. It's about Jesus. So that's what this book is. It's like a manual. People keep it next to their Bible, which blows me away. And they kind of view it as it can be topical, it can be something I need, whatever I need that day, or you can read it straight through. So the man that this is really written for is for that driven man, the man that has a drive, the man that wants to accomplish, but the world system will burn you out. If you do it the world's way, it leads to you're double-minded. You're wondering if you're doing it the right way. It's a lot of self-will. It's a lot of the message of self and grinding and hustling. And that's not the model Jesus provides. So we start with self-mastery because we're all created to be leaders, but not all men are leading. And so the first thing we have to get dominion over before we can be qualified for leadership is, and the message of dominion is popular right now. All men want to take dominion. That sounds great. Well, you have to take dominion over yourself first. So it always starts with self-leadership. So we break down different attributes in the life of Jesus, really short, impactful chapters. Then we go on to leadership. And what's that look like? The way he builds his team, the way he communicates as a leader. We get into communication. He's a storyteller. He pulls people towards him. He never pushes. And we talk about really practical actions and strategies that he uses that men can also apply. And so after that, there is EQ, which is really big right now. If you're in you're in leadership and development, I'm sure that you obviously are well studied and trained on how important EQ is for us. And Jesus is a master at EQ, emotional intelligence, building trust. And that's a key attribute that all men must employ as well. And then we get into the favorite one from a lot of guys that have not gotten this is the confrontative Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? That he defends the poor. He stands up. He takes a stand. And like you said, we need that more than ever in today's culture.
Good. Yeah, I think it's something that we all like to kind of strip Jesus away and focus on one aspect of Jesus. And what I love about your message is you embrace his full humanity.
Yeah.
It's not just, there are parts of Jesus' life that I look at and I'm thinking, I've got a ways to go. I'm not measuring up there. Sometimes I don't confront well, when I'm in, this, I think in general of everybody is, when we're all calm and collect, everything's good, but it's when the pressure's on.
Right.
Is when somebody is attacking our children or our wife or our spouse in some way. If we're a woman, especially for a woman with their children, they get really defensive, and listening to a lady the other day, a Bible study, and she was talking about how she responded in an email to somebody that had been offended because she invited all the girls from her daughter's her class at school to her daughter's party. And this lady's daughter was not in her class. And so she got offended and sent her a nasty email. And so this lady was talking about how she responded and how she didn't feel like responding nicely because she'd attacked her daughter and things like that. And that's true for it's women, it's men, it's everybody, that we're good with responding and confronting well when we're calm, but it's when that pressure's on and we're offended in some way. And it seems like today it's more and more easy to become offended. It's like we expect to be offended by something. And I think sometimes we Christians are a little thin-skinned. We get offended. I'm not saying that we don't defend our domain as far as our own lives and our families and things like that. We have our cultures and our way of doing things. Nothing wrong with that. But I can't expect my neighbor to live by the same principles that my family lives by because they're not part of my family, so to speak. And so I can't be offended if they're not living that way. And so I'm not going to go out and the street and start protesting them because they don't live the same way I do. And I'm not going to yell at them and call them names and things like that. And so I think that's just so good that you address that Jesus absolutely confronted. I mean, he called the Pharisees, pit vipers, which was, if you read the Old Testament, that is not a good thing to be called back then because that was a source of death for them when they were in the desert. So I just love that about that and think that's awesome that you talk about healthy confrontation there and trust.
Are you feeling like you're not living up to your full potential? You know you have a God-given message, but you're not sure how to bring it to life?
Made for More's Message Launch Program is here to help you clarify that God-given message, know how it serves others, and successfully publish your ministry book or digital product.
With our program, you can launch or grow your ministry, get people interested in hearing your message, and start generating more financial support.
So if you're ready to take the first step towards fulfilling your calling, watch our free training at workshop.messagelaunchprogram.com.
Join the Message Launch Program today
at workshop.messagelaunchprogram.com.
And so trust and confrontation, I think, are very much interrelated. If I can't trust that you are safe, if I can't trust that you have thy interest at heart, I can't have a conflict with you. I can't have a confrontation with you. You want to unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things Jesus does is that he has this ability to really, I mean, he's got crowds pressing in everywhere, but he can focus on one person and he can give them his undivided attention. And, we unpack a couple scenes, but, he's got the disciples, they're jockeying for different positions at some point in the ministry, right?
Yeah.
And he's getting down on his knee and he's focusing on a child.
Yeah.
And he's saying, this is what you need to be like. And he's just changing the paradigm. He comes in, we forget because, you mentioned all the popular leadership and development writers, right? And we have all these principles now, but there was no principle, there was no self-help course, there was no leadership and development study on servant leadership in century one. It didn't exist. Leadership was ruling. It was taking dominion. It was the government or the Pharisees. It was either the religious or the political system. So if anyone was aspiring to leadership, they were aspiring to rule over someone. So when Jesus comes in and teaches servant leadership, it blows everything apart. I know that's popular now, but it's from the Bible. And when he did it, it was not popular.
Yeah. They crucified him because it wasn't popular, right?
Right.
And I mean, that was the whole thing with Jesus is they did want him to come in like the empire and conquer. Just had Easter. Just thinking about that Palm Sunday, and they had two great armies gathering on their border at the time, and it was the equivalent of a Russia and a China flexing their military muscle and showing their tanks in their latest warfare, and Jesus, their ruler, Israel's ruler, comes in on a donkey. And they're like, whoa, okay, something wrong with this picture here. You're not going to defeat that army on a donkey. And it was, so we think that Jesus was crucified because he offended a few people. Jesus was crucified because he disappointed people. He did not meet their expectations of the military ruler to come in and conquer and kick out the military powers. He came in as a servant. And he said, the way of love is the way we're going to attract and transform the world. Look, I could fight them and it would just be a temporary victory. We could run them out, but then they would rebuild their army and they would come back in and we'd have to fight again. But if we change their hearts, if we change their minds, if we make them a new creation and bring the kingdom present here today and now, not just wait for someday, then in doing so, we not only transform them, but we can transform the world. And this is the seed that I'm planting here in Israel. You are that incubator. You're the womb of civilization. You're the womb of new creation here. And that was that message of Easter. And then when they tried to stamp it out and crucify it, say, no, that is not the message we want. You can't kill love.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah, it's interesting as you talk about this, Jeff, because back then you had the political movement, which were trying to get a hold of Jesus to use him for their purposes. These were known as the Zealots. And then we also had the religious movement, which they wanted to control Jesus. Fast forward to 2023, it's the same thing. The political movement always wants to get a hold of Jesus and twist and use him to serve their purpose. And same thing with religious folks. And he comes in and says, my kingdom is of another world. And that's what he came to establish his kingdom. And it's a spiritual kingdom, first and foremost. And that's why they couldn't receive him then. And that's why people can't receive him now.
Yeah. Yeah, we Christians don't rule the world well. I've discovered that. Unless we keep Jesus at the center of our hearts and minds. And I'm not saying look, I want political leaders to have character as much as anybody, but it just seems like that the problem with that is we start placing our hope in humanity, hope in a political leader, as opposed and this somehow going to legislate our morality, legislate our principles, legislate our ethics. And you can't do that. You can't force anybody to acquiesce. If Jesus can't force, if God can't force, God could have. He could have snapped his fingers and the world would have bent to his knee. But there would have been up their knee at him. There would have been nothing satisfying about that. That's not based in love. Nothing coercive about love there. A friend of mine, theologian Thomas J. Ord, and that's kind of his entire work is an uncontrolling God. And people don't like that idea. And I won't go into all of that. But essentially, as his premise is that love is uncontrolling. It doesn't force its will upon it. It simply invites. And then as people come in voluntarily, then they can choose the way of love. And in doing so, they become a new creation.
Yeah. Well, let's take that message even one step further, because what's that mean for you and I as followers of Christ today, as the men listening to us and the women as well, is that God invites us into partnership. He invites us into doing something with him, where we have this idea in Christianity that God does it all for me, right? So there's this one side, and because you've been through the Unfair Advantage Challenge, but I present these two pictures of one side is saying, I'm just going to sit around and the phone's going to ring, money's going to show up in the mailbox, whatever it is that I need for my calling, God's going to serve me, or he's going to do it because he's in control of everything all the time, despite any action that I take or any way that I surrender or lack of surrender. And then the other side, which is the guys that I mostly talk to, are super driven and say, you know what, I'm going to bang the door down myself. I'll make it happen. I'll use my self-willpower and we'll do this. And God's saying, no, I want to do it with you. And that's the message of partnership.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. And creation is not a one-time act. It's an ongoing act. It continues.
I like that.
God creates new life every day. The sun sets every day. It rises every day. And God, we take a breath. I mean, from one moment to the next, our breath is a gift from God.
And Jeff, we're made in his image.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're also creators. So every person listening right now, the question before all of us is, what are we creating?
Yeah. Good. What are you creating? Yeah. What is God echoing through your life today?
I love it.
That is so good. But the standard 59, so the book, and then you got the study out there, and then they can do a partnership and coaching with you as well, even beyond that, right?
Yeah, I'll walk you through what I have real quick. For anyone that's listening that wants more, I know you'll drop the links. But if you want to see what I'm about, connect with the book, or find anything I'm up to, the podcast, the blog, anything, you can go to standard59.com. That's standard59.com. That comes from Isaiah 59. In terms of something, I obviously have the book out there, and that's on Amazon, and I get a lot of good feedback on that. And what I've done recently is, and you found this because YouVersion picked up the standard. We made it a very short 6-day Bible study. It's a 300-page book, so it's a very light Bible study that kind of just brings people into the message that we talked about of, just starting to understand how Jesus sets the standard for masculinity. There is a follow-up. There's a free email challenge that you took a part of, Jeff, and that's how we got to know each other. You gave me some great feedback on that. And it's really been impacting men. The feedback I'm getting is phenomenal. It's absolutely free. It's called the Unfair Advantage Challenge. You can find it at accessyouradvantage.com or just go to the main website. And in that challenge, I take you through an 11-day journey. It's one email a day. And we talk about these concepts that we touched on here. Hey, one side saying, how do I live my life? Am I waiting for God to do everything? Or, how do I really cooperate? What does partnership look like? And I give you some very practical ways to connect with the Lord, because Jeff, what I see in the Christian landscape is that the advice is usually generic, and it's not bad advice, but I just can't do a lot with it, or it means something different to me than what it means to you. Right. And here's the advice. Pray and read your Bible, brother.
Yeah.
Right? Pray and read your Bible. You want to go pray and read your Bible. It's great advice, but how do I pray? And what do I read? And how do I start? We need to understand God's process for us. So that's what I'm starting to unpack in that challenge. And yeah, it does for anyone that wants to go deeper. I have a coaching program. I'm leading a group of men right now. We have a phenomenal time and some deep coaching, some deep Bible study, deeper biblical principles. But even if someone just wants to take the challenge for free and just see what that's about, I invite anyone to take a part of that.
Yeah, and what I love about it, Josh, is that it wasn't pushy at all. I mean, certainly you do have the coaching program that has a small cost to it that people engage in, but that's not the point of the free emails. That's not the point of your Bible studies that you offer. It's not like every scripture in it. Oh, by the way, I've got this, would you click this link here or you'll miss out. It's not heavily marketed at all. It's just an option that is a very soft sell for people that basically, if they've enjoyed the Bible study and want the opportunity to go deeper with you, they have that opportunity. But simultaneously, the stuff that they get in coaching, the difference is you're there guiding them. If they are motivated and driven of their own, they can read the book, they can do the Bible studies, they can listen to the podcast. I mean, you have all these other resources that are for free out there, right?
Yeah. And Jeff, I mean, I want to applaud you because what people may not realize is it costs money to do a podcast. So you're investing in this, right? I have one too, so I know what that cost is. Making the challenge, my goal is just to serve, just like you have a heart to serve on this program. So it really comes from a heart of giving. I don't care if you go deeper. Not everyone's meant to go deeper in this. If that is you, yes, there is a cost. And I want to say this because this is important for Christians to understand. Yes, the gospel's free, but there's always a cost to following Jesus. And I want to just ask, how many things were free in your life that you just never valued and you just never showed up or gave your full attention to because you didn't make an investment there? And it's a biblical principle to make an investment or sow a seed where you're receiving. And that unlocks something for you. But here's the bottom line. Unless someone pays something, they're not going to pay attention. And so it's part of serving someone to have them have a chance to come alongside. That's not a sell for my program. That's just a biblical principle for wherever you are in your church. If you're serving, if you have the opportunity to sow into someone, you will show up differently than if you just take it or leave it or come casually and just, hey, I'll just take all the freebies.
That's funny you say that. I volunteer with an organization called Dynamic Church Planting International, and we train Christian leaders around the world to plant churches. Since we have 9 tracks, we offer it 100% free. It does cost the organization a good bit of money because there's websites involved. We send trainers out. Everybody's a missionary there. They are self-supported. They raise, even the CEO of the organization as a missionary, he raises his own support for his financial purposes. And the biggest problem we have, especially on the American side, not so much from international community, but on the American side, is just people don't see value in it. They will come and they'll get halfway through and maybe they'll finish it, maybe they won't. Sometimes they'll other things get in the way and now we pair them with a coach and accountability that completion rate goes up to about 90%. But prior to that, where we just offered it for free on a website without any accountability for people to go through, completion rate was less than 5%.
Yeah.
And it goes back to if people don't have any investment financially, at least on the American side, any investment financially, they don't find as much value in it. Yep. So that's good. So no, don't apologize. I guess is what I'm saying. Don't apologize. And again, you're not out there trying to make money. It probably costs you a lot more money. I know what it costs to publish a book too. So
yeah,
it's not cheap. If you're Max Lucado or Maxwell, they'll pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars up front. Otherwise, they want you to pay up front, and then you get to recoup your cost on the back end, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, Josh, it's been great getting to know you. Again, if you're listening, I will make sure that all the links of everything is available on the website. Go to the YouVersion Bible. He's got a Bible study there. Go to standard59.com. Listen to it and subscribe to his podcast out there. Good stuff. Great leadership material there. All biblically based, all contextually biblical based. I can't say that for everybody that's out there, but I can say it for Josh. He just does a fantastic job. And thanks again for being here, brother.
Oh, thank you so much. It was an honor. Keep doing what you're doing. It's making a big difference. And this is such a big impact with this podcast.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Jeff.
I want to remind everyone, too, that on Revitalize to Plant, Reshaping the Established Church to Plant Churches is available at on Amazon or anywhere, Whiffenstock, anywhere you want to buy books, Books A Million, or you can go to book.revitalizetoplant.com. And there you can get a discount on for $15. I think it lists for $19 on Amazon. But I'll even pay the shipping through the USPS, United States Postal Service. I'll pay the shipping if you want to purchase it directly from me. Again, that's $15. It doesn't matter either way. But revitalizetoplant.com. And you all, it's been great being here. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe, if you will. A lot of people listen to this. We get about 2,000 downloads per episode. We're in the top 17% of all podcasts, which is great. This is just a testimony to people wanting to hear the story of God, and all that is good. But I'd encourage you to subscribe and then share it with your friends, because the subscriber base is what will help us get these voices out there, right? I've told you this is not about me. It cost me money to produce this podcast. I paid over $1,000 last year just in podcast promotion, production, and the tools to edit. The hosting of the podcast is not free. All these things, I'd encourage you to please like and subscribe, if you will. Thanks a lot. You can be a co-creator with God by helping to echo our guest voices, share our episodes with friends and family and on your own social media accounts. Give us positive 5-star reviews. The more positive reviews we have, the more visibility we have, and the more voices that are echoed through eternity. We often invite guests who are serving faithfully year after year, often in anonymity in their respective roles in ministries. God sees them, and the reality is for a good kingdom leader, that's enough. We do not do what we do for the accolades of humanity. We do it because we're called by God. But I believe that God uses people like you and I to continue those reverberations and echo them throughout eternity. You can partner with God by liking, subscribing, writing a quick positive 5-star review, and again, sharing those voices with friends and family and on your own social media accounts. Those reviews will eventually lead to other guests who have larger platforms that have more listeners, who will then in turn listen to the show. And again, it further echoes those voices, which is the whole vision of the Echoes Through Eternity podcast here, is to continue echoing those voices that God is echoing through eternity there. So like and subscribe and review us if you would. We'd appreciate that greatly.